Good day, all the wonderful people. Welcome to the program Changing the World with me, Lorette Dye. It is a privilege to share this time with you. I believe there are many ways to change the world and many things needed to do so. But I do believe that it is possible and that one person can change the world. And who knows, maybe you are that one person. As I believe it starts with you. You are important to God. You matter and your choices matter. Now if we read in Luke chapter 2 from verse 41, we will find the story of Jesus that at the age of 12 accompanied his parents, Mary and Joseph, and a large group of their relatives and friends to Jerusalem for Passover. On the day of their return, Jesus, according to the Bible, lingered, staying in the temple. But Mary and Joseph thought that he was among the group, while he actually wasn't. Mary and Joseph headed back home, and after a day of travel, only after a day, they realized that Jesus was missing. So they returned to Jerusalem. I can just imagine it. It was probably getting towards evening. They traveled the whole day. They were camping or setting up camp. They were looking for Jesus to maybe give him some food. And then they realized, but he's nowhere. And I can just imagine the anxiety that this should have or must have caused them. We can compare it with a parent in today's life where he goes to the shop, a father, maybe a mother, and then go back home and realize, oh my goodness, I left my child at the shop. That anxiety that we must feel, that fear, and then rushing back and hoping you will find your child and he will still be fine and he'll be okay, and maybe even hope that the police don't lock you up. So that fear that they must have felt. And in those days, a day's travel was a long time. It wasn't easy. It wasn't just jumping in your car and driving quickly and be back there in a very short while. So they had to deal with that anxiety for quite a long time. Now, they went by foot. Maybe they had a mule for carrying all this stuff that they needed. But it took them a long time. There was no shortcut back to find Jesus. And when they returned to Jerusalem, it took them another 2 days to find him. 3 days after they left him, they found Jesus in the temple. You can just imagine going from one place to another, almost embarrassed to say, I lost my child. Did you see him? Where else can we look? And going from place to place and trying to find him. Now, today, I want to talk to you about the fact that we often feel that we are far from God. You know that moment when you pray and you feel as if your prayers are hitting the ceiling and not going beyond, where you feel your direct line to God doesn't exist, it has been cut. If you are at that place today, I want to talk to you about why this happened and what you need to do to change this, to reconnect with God. Talking about Luke chapter 2 from verse 41, the story where Jesus' father and mother, Joseph and Mary, left him in Jerusalem and left without him. Now, I know many times when people talk about this part of Scripture, they focus on that Jesus, even as a young child, was anointed and had a lot of wisdom. But I want to focus on a different part today. I want to focus on the fact that they left him behind without even realizing that they did. You see, what happens in life is that often we find ourselves in a place where we need God. But because we didn't keep our relationship with Him alive while things were going well, we find ourselves isolated and lost. And I want to tell you today, it is never because God left you. He doesn't leave us. He doesn't forsake us. He is there. He is waiting with open arms for you. If you are far from God, then I want to make the statement that it is you that left God behind. Maybe you ran ahead of Him. Maybe you just didn't take notice. Maybe you just assumed, like Jesus' parents, that He is still there. But you never did anything to make sure that He is there, to bring your side and make sure that you stay in relationship with Him. You see, there are many things that is difficult in life, and often we get so busy with our lives. From personal experience, I want to tell you that the worst times in my life was the times that I was far from God, and where I just felt He left me. And I know today that He never did. He was exactly at the same place, waiting for me, wanting me, loving me, and waiting with open arms. I also learned that when you are far from God, when you went ahead of Him, or you just didn't worry enough, you just didn't take notice, that you find yourself in a desert. And it is just a terrible place to be. Now, I know of many people that don't even realize how difficult it is when they don't have God. Once you've experienced the love of God, once you've experienced His presence, once you've experienced His peace, and you lose it, you don't understand how people live without God. And I want to use this opportunity to encourage you. If you feel that way, this is not the end. This is not the end of the journey or of the story. There is a way back to God. We talked about when you are far from God, when you feel that there's no connection and you are in a spiritual desert. Now I want to talk to you about how do we get close to God again? How do we rectify this? How do we change this? And I want to explain this to you through a personal experience. There was many years ago a time in my life that I witnessed something that were very negative. I was in a relationship with a man that in front of me was abusive to someone else. And I had this confusion. He's always nice to me, but look at what he's doing. And I was unsure what to do. And I remember going to the nearest lake and I sat down under a tree and I tried to talk to God. But sadly, at that time, I was already far from God. But I still took that moment and I asked Him, what must I do? Must I continue with a relationship with this person? Or what must I do? And God didn't answer me immediately. Now, I think we have this perception that God should be at our beck and call. He should jump if we talk. He should be very glad that we are reaching out to Him. But unfortunately, that's not how it works. Once you are far from God, it takes time to get back to him. Just like Joseph and Mary, they were far from him. They had to turn around. They had to pack everything up. They had to go back alone. And even when they got back to Jerusalem, they had to search for him everywhere. And it took them another 2 days before they found him. They even looked among their relatives first, and then they went back. It took effort. It took time. They had to continue to search for him before they found him. And I want to tell you that is the secret. If you truly want to not be in the desert where you are anymore, if you truly don't want this distance between you and God anymore, then it's going to take time and effort to find him again. It's not that God is hiding from you. It is that you left him and you went so far from him that it really takes time to find him again. And he wants to see that you're serious. We have this thing of easy come, easy go. And God knows it. He understands human nature. And he wants to see that we are serious. You will have to sit down at his feet. You will have to look for him. You will have to worship him, praise him, sometimes be silent, wait for him, but be available. But at the end, it is absolutely more than worth it. The question I get most in my life is probably, how do I hear God's voice? Someone once told me that God's will is where God's peace is. And I've learned that that is the basic block of hearing God's voice. You see, we can only have a close relationship with God if we are in his will. You can compare this to walking in a shadow. If you, for example, had someone that held an umbrella over you against the sun, then unless the two of you stay together, you are not going to have shade over you. If you walk too fast, or if you go left when the other person is going straight, you are going to be exposed to the sun. And it is very much the same with our relationship with God. If you want a relationship with God, if you want God to use you to change the world, then you have to stay not only close to him, but also in his will. And then the question arises, how do I know what is God's will for me? Because it's not for everyone the same. Don't make the mistake to think plan for everyone's life looks the same. What God has planned for you is uniquely shaped to you and your life and who you are. And therefore, you need to know what God's plan is for you. You need to check in regularly that you are in God's will. And the way to do this is by measuring if you have God's peace. The moment that you lose that amazing peace that only God can give, it is time to go back to the drawing board. And it has become my way of measuring my life. The moment I feel far from God, the moment I have anxiety or unsurety, or I feel a little bit all over the place, or I just lost my peace, I go back to God and I seek him and I search for him until I find what His will is for me. And with that, I find His peace. And His peace tells you that you are in His will and that you are at the right place. So if you want to get to know God better, if you are someone that are at the beginning of your journey, or you have been far from God and you are trying to get back to Him, that is where you have to start. Sit at His feet. Find out what went wrong. Maybe look at different things that you did. Maybe think of different options that you had. Think of different things you can do now, different choices. And without expecting God to just jump and let you know immediately, just be quiet and listen and wait. When you are moving back in His will, and when you are there and you're serious and you are getting closer to Him and you are available, you will find His peace. I once heard someone saying on TV that they don't believe in God because how is all the ridiculous stories in the Bible possible? How can it be true? The story of Noah and the ark, of Moses and the sea that were opened up. And he continued to talk about these examples and say, it doesn't take a lot of brain cells to realize that it is impossible. If I could have talked to him, I would have said, yes, sir, but only if you believe that our God is a Mickey Mouse God. The reason that it sounds too good to be true or too amazing or too out there for you is because your brain is too small to grasp the greatness of God. The things that you read about in the Bible are small things compared to what God is capable of. We just have to look at the universe and all the planets out there and the galaxies to realize how amazingly big God is. And once we try to fit God into our human minds, and all people do that, or most people do that, where they try to make sense of God, and they try to understand Him, and they try to put Him in a box that they can understand, or in a form they can understand. And in the process, people are minimizing God. God is not small. God is bigger than anything that you can imagine. We don't need to live with fear. We don't need to make our own decisions and live our life alone. We don't need to be on this life journey on our own. God is there. He's waiting with open arms. He's waiting for you. He wants you to sit at His feet. He wants you to come to Him and trust Him and give your life over to Him and seek His will for your life, like we've been talking about today. And in that, you will see miracles happen. And yes, we don't talk about miracles so much anymore today. We don't share miracles. We think people will think that we are just crazy when we talk about the uniqueness of God, the amazing ways He works, the big, mighty ways that He works. But as we continue with this program over the next few weeks, I would like to share with you how amazing and unique God is. And in the process, how He's busy with so many things in this world right now, right at this moment. The question is just, do you want to be part of that? Because yes, I talked about changing the world, but there's one thing that I am 100% convinced of, and that is not without God. At the beginning of this program today, I said one person can change the world. Now I want to add to that. Yes, one person that is embedded and totally sacrificed to God and in the will of God, that God works through, can change the world. As I am coming to the end of my time with you today, I do want to encourage you. If you are in the desert, if you are far from God, if you are seeking Him, then do it with all your heart. The Bible tells us that we need to seek God with everything in us. In Deuteronomy 4 verse 29 we read, "But if from there you seek the Lord your God, you will find Him if you seek Him with all your heart and with all your soul." And it's that word that I want to leave you with today. And I want to encourage you to see God with everything in you and not let go until you find Him. This was the program Changing the World with myself, Lorette Dye. And remember, don't let this day go by without laughing, dancing, singing, and sitting at God's feet. I really feel blessed and honored that you spent this time with me. Be safe and be blessed.